quite frankly, there are many days where I wake up and I'm like, they all need to be fired. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. None of this is working. This would never work at any company. This would never work at any nonprofit, like in my world, where you're accountable to certain things.
Today, Trey Walsh, host of the Progressive Bitcoiner podcast, delves into the intricate relationship between Bitcoin and progressive values within the landscape of US politics. With a keen eye for social justice and human rights, Trey explores how Bitcoin aligns with progressive ideals, offering a potential solution to the systemic issues of money, corruption, and greed plaguing our modern political system. Through insightful commentary and thoughtful analysis, Trey highlights the transformative potential of Bitcoin in advancing social equity and challenging entrenched power structures. Before we get on with the video, we'd like to introduce our sponsors who have made this series possible: Stampseed, the Orange Pill app, and Swan. It's our mission to provide our audience with a safe, reliable, and robust way to buy, store, and learn about Bitcoin. Our partners are businesses and people we respect, and are products that we at Bit Intelligence personally use. You're watching 21 Voices. Without further ado, here is Trey Walsh.
Every political cycle, I think people get more and more disconnected. More and more, we can only hear so much from the Democratic Party in my mind. This is a fight for democracy, right? For us to be reliant on a candidate who's in his 80s and seems to be declining and would not be anyone's first choice for a president on either side, like Trump and Biden, as our final choices for one of the most important jobs on the planet ever. In the face of wars, all these really important decisions, seems like a real loss to America. And I think in general, most people seem to agree with that, but it won't change anything because there's too much money in politics. There's too much power in the RNC and DNC in the US for these political parties. There's not enough direct democratic solutions where people can feel that they're really voting and their voice is heard on specific things. Our representative democracy is even broken down because politicians can be bought and paid. So whoever you're voting for, they're answering to someone else. In a lot of cases, they're not answering to you. So that said, I think, especially amongst Bitcoiners, there's a lot of different involvement in politics. I think, folks like Dennis Porter, or folks like the Bitcoin Policy Institute, so many different others that are engaging in politics in the regulatory landscape to ensure that we can hold our own private keys, that Bitcoin mining is welcome in the US. These other things are super, super important. And I am a firm believer that, local politics and even state politics are super important these days as well. So I'm still politically involved and active, I'd say, especially on certain causes, but I think it's important to know how to make the most change, right? And there's a lot of organizations that are doing that work on our behalf. But the days of I'm going to put in my vote and Joe Biden is going to do everything that I would like or everything he said on the campaign, I feel like those days are a little bit gone. So I don't want to be a doomsdayer with this. And I think some people are completely separate from politics. And I think it's really popular in Bitcoin to say like, well, the most important vote you can take is, buying Bitcoin. I'm not fully in that camp. I think a lot of people should really be in politics, especially the ones who don't want to be, because too often the people that are in politics are the ones who they really want to be. Their egos are huge. They want a better job in 4 years at a big bank. Let me be a politician first. And that revolving door syndrome, right? That's not how politics used to be. That's not how our nation was founded, but now it has become. So those that are most reluctant to be active in politics are probably the ones that should reconsider. I don't mean running for office, but I mean making your voices heard, sending letters to your local state senators, to your federal senators, making your voice heard, I think is really, really important. But do I have hopes in the political system unless some things change? No, I don't. And that's something that Bitcoin might fix a little bit of this, but getting money out of politics, having term limits on politicians, I think is really, really important. Banning certain stock trading for politicians, I think is really important. There's a lot of practical solutions that I think a lot of Bitcoiners would probably agree with, but it doesn't have to do with Bitcoin necessarily. And then we tie that into government accountability, deficit spending, folks not having to rely on government checks as much because they're like, no, we saved Bitcoin 10 years ago. We're good. Thanks though. That's a great future to envision. And that's something that I'm getting more and more excited about. Many in the Progressive Caucus, who I respect and align with a lot of their values on things, I think are completely off on economic principles. And some of them have said, to articulate about the deficit for not funding certain things, is racist. That's what some have articulated. And that cannot be further from the truth. What is truly systemically racist is allowing inflation to completely run its course. And who benefits the most from inflation are those top 1% who have their net worth in stock markets that go berserk like they did in 2020, 2021 for these stockholders who really benefit from lower rates with the Fed and then inflation going out of control and money printing going out of control. Those are the ones that benefit, are those that play the game of Wall Street. And a lot of those in lower and working classes do not have the time or energy or money to figure out how to do that. So actually taming our deficit spending and trying to get inflation more under control is going to do better for generations to come, especially for the working class, than the top 1%. And I wish we would talk about that more. But the main talking points from the left, not because it's accurate, but because it's popular, is that, well, you know, and I'm no fan of Elon Musk, but Elon Musk is the reason we have, you know, inflation. These corporations, or, you know, what they charge for cars, what they charge for groceries. That is a minuscule, like, inflation is a very complicated basket. And I think Lynn Alden does one of the best jobs talking about inflation and her work and resources, but it's complicated. It's not one simple fix, but one of the largest causes of inflation is monetary debasement, of money printing. You're adding more supply into that. And you're not necessarily adding that demand, right? So with COVID, we had all these supply shocks. We had all of these, you know, the shipping delays and things throughout the world, and just the economy shutting down. A lot of money printing, a lot of deficit spending, a lot of money creation and sending out stimulus checks and things like that. Now, some of that I might agree with, some I would not, but either way, that is going to cause inflation to run rampant, and they're lying to you saying that that was not a cause, right? Or saying that, oh, there's a minimal cause, really it was the supply chain, right? So they're using these things to cover up when really it's like we need to get our government spending under control. And also, if we're not able to spend outside of our means, or even set a threshold, set a more reasonable cap on outside of our means, let's start there, we won't be able to fund these wars that progressives in the left are vehemently against right now, like talking about supplying weapons to Israel and these things. If folks on the left are not agreeing with that, okay, let's have more approvals on what's actually required. You can't do that. We don't have money for this and that. It would cause us to refocus on what we're actually supporting and bring a bit more of direct democracy back to the people. We're only spending money on what we're focusing on. But because of our 4-year political cycles, it's not popular to go in and say, okay, we're going to have to cut certain things. They have created a monster issue that will constantly be kicked down the road because they're not accountable. They're only accountable to every 4 years, every 8 years. Politicians come and go, and someone's going to be left holding the hot potato at the end of the day. We're not sure when that's going to happen, but at some point we're really going to have to, you know, either hyperinflate or cut our deficit. That's just mathematically what's going to have to happen at some point.
Please bear with us for a quick message from our sponsors. These videos take a lot of time to shoot and edit, and we've partnered with brands we trust like Stamp Seed and the Orange Pill app in order to get the funding we need to bring you these videos every week. Don't store your Bitcoin in cold storage without stamping your seed phrase on an indestructible titanium plate. Stamp Seed is fireproof, rust-proof, impact-proof, and easy to hide. It has no loose parts and will give you ultimate peace of mind that your Bitcoin is safe and sound for the long term. Click the link in the description below for 15% off your stamping kit. When I finally got Bitcoin, it hit me like a lightning bolt. This was the currency of the future, the only money that truly mattered. But there was a problem. I was a lone hodler in a sea of skeptics. That is, until I discovered the Orange Pill app. Suddenly, I was connected with a network of like-minded Bitcoin enthusiasts right in my own city. The Orange Pill app is more than just a social network. It's a community of passionate individuals determined to change the world, one Satoshi at a time. This series is brought to you by Swan and created by Bit Intelligence. Remember to like this video and subscribe to both our channels for more videos like this every week.
You know, Elizabeth Warren, her comms team, like talking about Bitcoin, for instance, it's a guarantee they haven't looked at more than 2 pages of what Bitcoin is and what it could do. You can clearly see that. So a lot of it is ignorant. Same with economic principles. I think once a few party leaders say, this is the way it is, you'll see everyone else step in line because they want a certain committee assignment, because they want to win re-election, because if they don't say these certain things, another committee is going to come along, another super PAC. Here's the thing with getting money out of politics. It happens just as much on the left, if not more. Another super PAC that's going to run you out of your election. And some people will say, okay, the necessary evil is aligning myself with that political person. Let's say benefit of the doubt. Let's say someone like AOC, for instance, who a lot of progressives really like. Let's say there's certain decisions that she's made or certain things where you're like, she probably would know or would really appreciate whatever. Why is she lining up with all these other people? Why is she supporting Joe Biden? Why are these things happening? I think some progressive politicians might say, the ends justify the means. Like, if I am in this seat, I'm going to do more for people in my community than someone else would. So I'll do these few political games that I need to do to stay in power. In other ways, some people are like, this is all I've ever known. This is my job. I'm going to stay in power no matter what. And they're not even thinking about it. So long story short, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's just evil lying or ignorance. It's having an impact. And quite frankly, there are many days where I wake up and I'm like, they all need to be fired. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. None of this is working. This would never work at any company. This would never work at any nonprofit, like in my world, where you're accountable to certain things. There's no accountability, and something drastic has got to change. Well, I'd say it really depends on the context. Obviously, I think here in the West, one of the biggest hurdles for adoption is that, quite frankly, not a lot of people see it as something they need. Like, we have payment rails that work relatively. We have Cash App, Venmo, bank accounts, Apple Pay, all of these different things. So what I like Bitcoin most as, like a store of value and a peer-to-peer payment system, a lot of people in the West don't see value in that. They don't need it as much. And then off of that, they're listening to political leaders, mainstream media saying it's for terrorists, that it's killing, it's boiling our oceans, all these other things, and they decide to turn off. At some point, they might need it more. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, is just not seeing it relevant to their lives or relevant to their value set, which is one of the reasons I'm adamant about trying to speak to more liberals, progressives, people on the left, to what have you, about how this actually aligns with their values, and they should pay more attention, because right now there's not a lot of other things that can produce the same outcomes in certain situations as Bitcoin. For me, it's about continuing to educate wherever you're at, wherever your value set is at, wherever your community is at, if it's in your local church congregation, at your job, at your doctor's office, if you're in the global South doing education efforts, if you're like me trying to speak to more, liberals and progressives on it, I think everyone kind of has a part to play in terms of adoption, in terms of getting on board with using Bitcoin, playing around with it, and talking about it. It really, in a lot of ways, happens person to person, for people experiencing it themselves, and then putting out great content like what you're doing here, and more education, more resources for people. And then the Trojan horse is happening, right? The Trojan horse of Wall Street getting in, realizing they're unlocking freedom money for the world by advocating for it, by putting it out there. Some of these Wall Street firms actually donating their profits to Bitcoin core development, which I was just like, oh my gosh, I did not anticipate that happening. Like, these Wall Street firms are funding open source development, which is crazy. So the Trojan horse effect, I have a lot of hope in as well. So while I see a lot of challenges, I think if we just kind of keep this momentum going and keep focused and add more people year after year, I really do think it's inevitable.
Trey aims to educate the wider voter base about the intersection between Bitcoin and progressive politics. He continues to spark important conversations and catalyze meaningful change within the Bitcoin community and the political landscape. As we reflect on the insights shared in this video, we're reminded of the power of Bitcoin to inspire hope and drive social progress, transcending boundaries and empowering individuals to create a more just and equitable world. Follow The Progressive Bitcoiner on YouTube and on Twitter for full episodes with incredible voices in the space. Stay tuned for more enlightening discussions, and remember to subscribe for the latest recaps, insights, and films about all things Bitcoin.
What's up, everyone? My name's Bevan, and I'm the creator of the Bit Intelligence YouTube channel. We partnered with Swan for this original series so that we could reach the largest audience possible. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to both of our channels below so that you don't miss a single episode.
This is 21 Voices. If you want to watch another episode, try this one here. We'll see you next time.